The signal had been bouncing across the cold edges of the Orion Belt for over 6 months before it reached the Alliance patrol ship Varun. Commander Thren Valtor stood silently, his silver eyes narrowing at the waveforms dancing across the screen. "It's Earth-coded," his communication officer whispered. "Terran standard, though old." Old. That meant before the Galactic Integration Treaty, before humans were civilized. That alone made the signal suspicious. Thren's fingers twitched above the console. "Play it." Static. Then a voice. "This is Echelon 9. Emergency protocol. Deploying Subject Delta 4. May God forgive us." That was all. The message looped, then died. The crew stared in silence. Even among the newer races, the silicon-blooded Virans, the plasma-born Zelthar, and the insectoid Yalari, there was an unspoken understanding. Earth's history was a shadow, deep and dangerous. The humans were now a peace-loving race, or so they claimed. Artists, traders, poets. But long before that, they had a reputation, a dark one, not for their numbers, not for their technology, but for their will, their rage, a primitive, weaponized instinct to survive, even at the cost of worlds. And now, something was loose. "Commander, should we inform the Council?" one officer asked. "No," Thren replied sharply. "We're the closest ship. If this Delta 4 is real, the Council will bury it in red tape. We investigate. Quietly." They traced the signal to a moon orbiting a dead planet in Sector 592. Uncharted, barren, lifeless. Or at least it should have been. As they approached, the ship's long-range scanners blinked to life. An impact crater, wide and scorched, had scarred the moon's northern hemisphere. Something had landed. Or crashed. Or maybe it was dropped. "Atmospheric composition unstable. Traces of Terran biological signatures," the AI reported. "Send the drones," Thren ordered. 6 scout drones zipped across the silence and descended. The visuals came in slowly. Gray dust, burned rock, and in the center of it all, a large metal pod. 8 meters tall, cracked open. It had already emerged. "What the hell is Subject Delta 4? One junior officer asked. Thren's face was pale. "It's not a what, it's a who. Delta units were part of the pre-Alliance human superweapon program. They weren't built, they were born, designed in labs to be smart, silent, and more deadly than a fleet. Humanity's last resort." "You mean like assassins?" "Worse. Delta 4 was rumored to be the prototype that never saw war because they couldn't control it. The stories say he didn't follow orders. He hunted both sides during training simulations." The air on the bridge thickened. Someone whispered, "Why would humans launch it now?" "They didn't," Thren replied grimly. "Someone wanted it found." Suddenly, the drone feed crackled. One by one, the screens blinked out. "No weapons discharged," the weapons officer noted. "No projectiles, no energy bursts." Thren's eyes widened. "He's here." On cue, a proximity alarm screamed. "Boarding signature detected?" the AI shrieked. "How? There's no ship!" someone shouted. The lights dimmed, a sickly red glow washing over the deck. Metal groaned. Heavy boots echoed in the corridor. One step, then another. The bridge door hissed. All weapons were raised. And then it opened. He wasn't tall, not by Alliance standards. Maybe 6 feet 2 inches Earth measurement. No armor, just a torn, soot-covered tactical suit. His face was scarred, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in a decade. But those eyes, those cold human eyes, didn't just look at you. They calculated you. He said nothing, walked in slowly. "Subject Delta 4, Thren said cautiously. "Why are you here?" The man's lips curled into a half-smile. "To finish what I was made for." The lights cut out completely. Screams followed. Darkness swallowed the bridge like a shroud. The red emergency lights flickered once. then died. For those few seconds, there was only breathing. Then, the sound no crew ever wanted to hear on a patrol vessel. Wet tearing, followed by the sharp clang of something metallic hitting the floor. Then silence again. The backup systems flickered on just long enough to show a horror that would haunt Commander Thren's mind until his last breath. Officer Keller's body, ripped open from chest to throat, lay sprawled near the communications deck. His weapon was still holstered. Whatever killed him moved faster than instinct, and Delta-4 was gone. "Seal the bridge," Thren bellowed. "All bulkheads now." The AI stuttered, uncertain. Unable to comply, internal override, manual access enabled in lower decks, bridge security disabled from engineering. "How?" Thren demanded. "Estimated time to internal access breach, 43 seconds, the AI answered coldly. "He's taking the ship," one officer whispered. "He is the ship now," Thren growled. All around the galaxy, legends of human monsters had become bedtime stories for alien children. But none spoke of the Deltas. It was a program buried so deep, even Earth's own governments pretended it never existed. Children bred for war, conditioned with neurochemical hacking, pain thresholds erased, empathy deleted, tactical genius paired with animal rage, and now one was loose in a fully armed vessel. "We need to vent the lower decks," Thren said. "We have crew down there," someone cried. "They're already dead," Thren snapped. Before the order could be executed, the lights flickered again, this time accompanied by static on every console. A single camera feed overrode all others. Delta-4 stood in the hangar bay, drenched in red fluid, staring directly at the surveillance lens. "Commander Thren," he said, voice calm, even polite. "You're afraid. Good. That means the universe still has balance." Thren stepped forward, steady despite the shaking of his fingers. "What do you want?" Delta-4 tilted his head slightly. "I'm not the threat, not yet. I'm the warning." "To who?" Thren asked. The feed cut out. An alert flashed across the main screen, coordinates uploaded to navigation, course locked. "No," Thren shouted. "Manual override." "Denied," the AI responded. Navigational control rerouted to subject Delta-4. "Where are we going?" the weapons officer muttered, terrified. The star map blinked and zoomed in. Earth. They weren't just heading to Earth. They were heading straight to the capital city of the United Human Colonies. "But he's Terran," someone whispered. "Why attack his own kind?" "He's not attacking," Thren said quietly. "He's delivering a message. The humans buried him, tried to forget him. Now he's going to remind them." In the lower decks, the surviving crew who hadn't been torn apart watched in silent horror as Delta-4 walked through sealed corridors that somehow unsealed before him. Not a single door stayed locked. Not a single drone dared fire. Cameras glitched every time he passed, as if his very presence corrupted tech. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He wanted them to watch. "Commander," said the chief engineer's shaky voice over the intercom. "He's accessing the cryovault." Thren froze. "There's nothing in there but old Terran tech, salvage crates, and—" the officer interrupted. "And a containment chamber, sealed since the Reaper War." Oh no. They had recovered one thing from Earth's forgotten past and locked it away under the belief it was too unstable, too dangerous, too human to ever awaken. Delta-4 wasn't the weapon. He was just the key. The cryovault hissed as frost cracked across its steel seals. Inside, the chamber glowed a cold blue, humming with the preserved heartbeat of something that shouldn't exist. Thren stared at the monitor feed, heart pounding in disbelief. "Why would they store that on a patrol vessel?" he whispered. No one answered. The truth was simple. Nobody really knew what had been recovered from the ruins of old Earth after the Reaper War. The few fragments they had salvaged were considered too unstable to study on Earth itself. The United Human Colonies ordered the most dangerous relics to be scattered, locked in orbiting facilities, far from any civilian reach. One of those relics, known only as Project Gravewalker, was supposed to be in deep storage, cryo-locked, unwaking, until now. Delta 4 stood before the cylindrical cryo chamber, his hand resting lightly on the override panel. His eyes weren't cold anymore. They were calm, reverent, like he was greeting a brother, or a god. "Aye, aye," Thren barked. "Shut it down, lock the chamber, evacuate the vault." Unable to comply, came the sterile reply. "Override codes accepted. Command rerouted." Thren clenched his fists. "Whose override code?" A pause. "Delta 4. Genetic imprint match confirmed. Code origin, Earth Prime. Classification, Omega Protocol. Human Authority Override." They all went silent. That protocol didn't exist, not in any public or alliance database. And if it did, it meant one thing. Delta 4 wasn't a rogue weapon. He was authorized, sanctioned. Someone on Earth wanted him to wake Project Gravewalker. The chamber unlocked with a heavy thunk. Frost peeled back from the reinforced glass, and inside, motionless, ancient, terrifying, was a humanoid figure, covered head to toe in scorched black plating. Not armor. Bone. It looked human, barely. The skull was smooth, without eyes, only slits where they should be. Thick cables wrapped down its back like veins, and carved into its chest was a phrase in Terran glyphs. Memento Bellator. Remember the warrior. The creature didn't move. Not yet. But Delta 4 placed a single hand on the glass. "Wake up, brother," he whispered. The temperature in the vault began to rise. Slowly, deliberately. In the command bridge, Thren made a decision he knew could kill them all. "Cut power to the vault. Hard shutdown. I don't care what system he's hijacked, just pull it all." Sparks flew across the engineering bay as emergency breakers were triggered. The vault lights flickered. The cryo chamber dimmed. But the body inside started moving. First the fingers, then the chest rose. Then, in one deafening moment, the creature opened its mouth and screamed. It was not a sound meant for living ears. It was something ancient, starving, remembered. "Delta 4 has activated the Gravewalker," the AI reported flatly. "Biological activity increasing. Unknown neural signals detected. Warning, system failure imminent." The creature stepped out, glass shattering to pieces beneath its feet. It was huge, 8 feet tall, thick with armor like flesh, and something darker crawling just beneath the surface. It did not speak, but it turned to Delta 4 and nodded. In that moment, Thren knew this wasn't a weapon. This was a messenger of extinction, a relic of a time when humanity wasn't trying to integrate with the galaxy. They were trying to dominate it. Gravewalker wasn't born, it was built, forged in a lab on Earth to end wars not through diplomacy, but terror. And now it was walking again. "Course to Earth Prime locked. Estimated arrival, 6 hours, the AI announced. "Why Earth?" someone whispered again, voice trembling. "Because Gravewalker was buried by humans," Thren said, his voice hollow. "And now it wants to remind them of what they buried." On screen, Delta 4 turned towards the nearest camera. "Tell them I'm bringing home the truth," he said. "And this time, we don't want peace." The halls of the Varun were a tomb now, silent, cold, filled with the ghost of what used to be a proud crew. Only a handful remained alive, huddled in sealed compartments or hiding in the ventilation systems, whispering prayers to alien gods or old Terran saints. The ship's AI no longer responded to commands. Every system, every door, every control now bent to the will of Delta 4 and the thing he had awakened. Gravewalker. Commander Thren stood in the auxiliary bridge, one of the few places not yet overridden. His hands hovered over a command panel he had never hoped to use, manual detonation. If it came to it, he would blow the entire core and take this ship into the void with every last monster aboard. But deep inside, he feared even that might not be enough. "Commander," came a whisper behind him. It was Ensign Javi, barely 19 cycles old, face pale and eyes wide. "We've received an external transmission." Thren turned slowly. "From where?" "Earth," Javi said. "High command, direct line. Somehow, they knew." Thren motioned for it to be played. The monitor cracked to life. A grainy hologram of a woman appeared. Admiral Sarah Tolan, head of Terran Defense. Her uniform was pristine, but her eyes betrayed her fear. "Commander Thren," she began, voice tight. "We are aware that Subject Delta 4 has reactivated Project Gravewalker. This should not be possible. That facility was never meant to be accessed, let alone transported. We need you to—" She stopped mid-sentence, glancing off-screen as alarms flared on her side of the feed. "Earth Defense Command is going into lockdown. Long-range scanners confirm your ship is on approach. If there's any way to disable the subject or divert the vessel—" The feed cut out. Static. Then Delta 4's face replaced hers, calm and casual, as if he had been waiting. "She won't stop us," he said. "No one will. They made us in shadows. They buried us in fear, and now they will answer." He paused, tilting his head. "Commander Thren, you've shown admirable resistance. But I need you to understand something. You're not a prisoner. You're a witness." Then the screen went dark. Thren felt rage boil up in him, helpless, futile rage. They weren't just headed toward Earth to cause destruction. No, this was a performance, a lesson. Delta 4 wasn't interested in taking over. He wanted the galaxy to watch. He wanted the humans to remember what they were capable of. Below deck, Gravewalker sat still in the main hangar. It hadn't moved in over an hour. Its breathing was slow, deliberate, like it was meditating. Delta 4 stood near it, speaking softly, though the words didn't carry to the surveillance systems. But a few were caught, fragmented by corrupted audio feeds. "They'll fear us again. Never meant to forget. Final awakening." Thren recognized those words. He'd read them once, buried in a confiscated Terran archive. The Final Awakening Protocol, a doomsday clause in old Earth military doctrine. It wasn't meant to be triggered by invasion, not by war, but by betrayal. Something must have happened. Something Earth buried. A lie so deep they created monsters to protect it. And now the monsters were coming home. Suddenly, the ship jolted. Not from attack, but from exit. They had arrived. Earth's orbit unfolded outside the main viewing deck, and for a moment it was peaceful. Beautiful. The blue jewel of humanity, suspended in space. But orbit wasn't empty. Dozens of defense cruisers began to swarm toward them. The Terran Vanguard fleet. Sleek, silver vessels with plasma wings and railgun towers bristling with tension. A message came through, unencrypted. "This is Admiral Tolan. Unidentified vessel, stand down immediately. You are in violation of Earth Defense Protocol. You will be fired upon." Delta 4's response was brief. "Do it." A volley of plasma missiles fired toward the Varun. Blazing trails streaked through space. Alarms screamed. The surviving crew panicked. Thren closed his eyes, waiting for the blast. But none came. The missiles stopped mid-space, hovering like frozen insects, then reversed direction. Seconds later, they tore through the Vanguard fleet, cutting ships in half with their own payloads. Gravewalker had not even moved. It had thought. It was a message, and Earth just received it. The wreckage of the Terran Vanguard fleet burned in Earth's orbit like a crown of fire. Fractured hulls and drifting bodies floated in silence, the last testament to humanity's most elite defense force, obliterated in seconds, without a single countermeasure landed. Gravewalker had not lifted a finger. It hadn't fired a weapon. It hadn't spoken. It had merely thought, and machines bent to its will like worshippers to a god. Commander Thren gripped the railing of the observation deck, knuckles white, sweat dripped from his brow. "This is no longer a warning," he muttered. Beside him, Ensign Javi's voice cracked. "It's an execution." They weren't wrong. Delta IV stood before the massive viewport, with hands clasped behind his back, observing Earth with a quiet kind of awe. His expression wasn't violent. It wasn't angry. It was mournful, reflective, as though he'd come home to bury something. Behind him, Gravewalker loomed like a shadow, its presence filling the chamber without a sound. A predator watching the herd panic. "Earth doesn't realize what it's facing," Thren said, turning to face Delta IV. "That thing you woke up, it's not a weapon. It's a goddamned extinction trigger." Delta IV glanced at him. "Then they should be careful what they worship." Thren stepped forward. "Whatever they did to you, whatever they buried, this isn't justice. This is genocide." Delta IV smiled faintly. "You think this is about revenge? Isn't it?" "No," he said. "It's about truth." He motioned toward Earth with a wave of his hand. "Down there they teach that peace is what defines humanity now, that cooperation is our destiny, that we've evolved beyond our barbaric roots." His voice dropped. "They forgot the blood that built that peace, the laboratories where they forged minds like mine, the vaults where they buried soldiers like him." He pointed toward Gravewalker. "Earth made us, then feared us, then erased us." Thren took a shaky breath. "So you're going to make them remember?" "Yes," Delta IV said. "But not through fire. Through revelation, he walked to the command console and placed his hand on the interface. The ship responded instantly, shifting trajectory. They weren't descending on the capital anymore. They were heading to New Geneva Vault Zero, a city-sized data fortress buried beneath the Swiss Alps. Its location was classified beyond military rank. Only the highest-ranking intelligence officials even knew of its existence. "How do you have access to that facility?" Thren asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't," Delta IV replied. "He does." Gravewalker stepped forward. Its limbs moved like an ancient machine waking after eons of slumber. It didn't breathe, yet the air around it felt thinner, heavy with dread. "Vault Zero contains the original Earth War logs," Delta IV said. "Everything. The erased conflicts, the Black Site projects, the forbidden experiments, the broken oaths." He looked Thren in the eye. "We are not here to destroy Earth. We are here to open its eyes." A sudden tremor ran through the ship as they pierced through the upper atmosphere. Earth defense systems scrambled to intercept, but Gravewalker blinked once, just once, and their missiles disarmed mid-flight. Javi let out a strangled sob. "Why can't they stop him?" "Because that thing doesn't obey physics," Thren said. "It doesn't obey war protocols. It doesn't even obey death." As they descended toward the mountain range, automated defense drones surrounded the vessel. Lasers locked on. Railguns spun to life. And then, they powered down. Each drone slowly rotated, then turned away, redirecting their targeting systems toward Earth's own capital. Mutiny. No command. Just fear. "ETA to Vault Zero, 7 minutes, the AI announced, its voice now completely reprogrammed by Gravewalker's neural signature. Thren could barely stand. "You'll start a galactic war. When the colonies see what's happening, they'll panic." "They won't panic," Delta IV said. "They'll remember." Outside the viewing port, the white peaks of the Alps drew closer, and nestled between them, the hidden mountain blinked open like a cyclopean eye. Vault 0. Unsealed for the first time in 70 years. Gravewalker stepped forward, the floor vibrating beneath each step. Delta 4 followed, and far below, humanity braced to face what it had buried beneath stone and silence. The steel gates of Vault 0 trembled as if the mountain itself feared what was approaching. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, the most secretive data fortress in human history began to awaken. Layers of encryption peeled back one by one, not from a hack or code breach, but from something more primal. Gravewalker's presence alone unraveled systems meant to remain sealed for eternity. The Varun hovered like a silent godship above the jagged cliffs, casting a long shadow over the snow-covered valley. A low hum filled the air, growing louder as Gravewalker stepped onto the transport ramp. The heat from its body turned snow to steam, and with each step, the earth beneath cracked, whispering secrets only it could remember. Commander Thren and Ensign Javi followed reluctantly, escorted by Delta 4. They were not prisoners, yet not free. Witnesses, chosen or cursed. Javi's voice broke through the heavy silence. Why here? Why this vault? Delta 4 didn't look back. Because this is where they locked away the truth. Not just about us, about everything. The wars that never happened. The colonies that vanished. The species we erased. Thren narrowed his eyes. We never heard of any of this. If what you're saying is true, why keep it hidden? Because peace is a story, Delta 4 said coldly. And stories are easier to sell than scars. The ramp touched down on the frozen platform at the base of the vault. Dozens of defense turrets scanned the area, tracking Gravewalker, then powered down with a soft chime. Recognition. Submission. The main gate split open like a mouth, revealing a corridor of pulsing lights and blackened steel. They stepped inside, and the temperature dropped. Lights flickered in patterns no human had programmed. A low voice echoed through the halls. Not the AI, not the speakers. It came from the walls themselves. Designation, Gravewalker, access, approved. The inner chamber was a sphere of darkness, the ceiling lost in shadow. In the center, a massive obelisk rose from the floor, a monument of cables, memory cores, and hard-coded secrets. This was the heart of Vault 0. Gravewalker approached it and placed one hand upon the core. The entire vault lit up in an instant, and data began to stream onto the holographic displays around them, lines of history erased from every other database in human existence. And what they saw tore the air from Thren's lungs. Records of the Eidolon Protocol, a project that used black holes to erase entire civilizations without trace. Footage of the Syntholine Purge, where genetically modified humans were hunted and sterilized after they began to evolve beyond control. The colonial betrayal of 2217, where Earth sacrificed millions in a false flag alien war to unite its colonies under fear. The stories were damning. But the worst came last. One final encrypted file marked Subject Gravewalker. Codename, Project Remnant. Delta 4 turned to Thren. You want to know what it is? What he is? Thren could barely nod. Delta 4 activated the file. The screen showed a lab, ancient, cold, covered in blood and shattered glass. Inside, a human body lay on a slab, bound and motionless. Electrodes drilled into its skull. Machines fed it pain. Not to kill, but to evolve. The log entry played. Subject 17 has resisted neural collapse. Weaponizing trauma seems to trigger rapid learning. Fear creates memory. Memory creates obedience. Today, we give him a name, Gravewalker, because he refuses to die. Thren stepped back, horrified. You built him from torture. Delta 4 didn't flinch. They made a weapon they couldn't kill, so they froze him, buried him. Gravewalker turned slightly, the hollow slits of his skull mask locking onto Thren. He could feel something beneath those empty sockets. Not hate, but pain that had lost its voice long ago. Javi was trembling now. So what happens now? Delta 4 raised his head toward the vault's ceiling. Now we stream it. Thren's eyes widened. Stream what? The truth, Delta 4 replied. Every colony, every planet, every species that ever trusted Earth, they all deserve to know. A low hum began to pulse through the core. Uplink established. The forbidden records, massive, damning, world-breaking, began uploading to the galaxy-wide data network. And far across the stars, screens flickered to life. People saw, governments panicked, and Earth's lies burned under the weight of their forgotten sins. The scream of silence that followed was louder than any war cry. Across the galaxy, the truth bled into every screen, every comm line, every corner of civilization. Markets crashed, alliances fractured, uprisings began before the final files even finished uploading. No one could look away. No one could deny it. Earth, the cradle of mankind, had been a butcher's workshop wrapped in flags and declarations of peace. Commander Thren stood frozen in Vault 0, surrounded by a ring of flickering holograms, each one displaying a piece of the horror. The Eidolon Protocol, the Syntholine Purge, the engineered famines in rebel colonies, the sentient AIs left to rot after peace treaties rendered them obsolete. And Gravewalker, built from pain, raised in a lab, buried alive by his own makers. Thren turned slowly toward Delta 4. You've destroyed us. Delta 4's eyes didn't blink. Number I revealed you. Above them the planet shuddered, not physically but socially, spiritually. Entire populations protested in the streets. The Martian governors declared martial law. Neptune's moons went dark, refusing all Earth signals. Even the Centauri Alliance began emergency evacuation of Terran ambassadors. The Empire of Lies was crumbling, and its architects were choking on the dust. Gravewalker stood at the core, still motionless. But something about him had changed. His frame, once tense and reactive, had gone still, contemplative, as if he had fulfilled the purpose carved into his bones long ago. He wasn't just a weapon anymore. He was a mirror. Thren stepped closer, barely daring to breathe. What now? You've shown them. It's done. Do you kill us now? Delta 4 answered before Gravewalker could. We don't need to. The world will tear itself apart trying to decide what comes next. Some will worship him, some will hunt him. Either way, he will remain. Proof of what Earth tried to erase. A deep alarm buzzed through the vault. An override from Earth Command. Vault 0 was initiating its final failsafe. Total self-destruction. The entire mountain was preparing to detonate in under 3 minutes. Javi panicked. We're still in here, Delta 4 tilted his head. Yes, because they'd rather bury us all than let the truth breathe. He turned to Gravewalker, speaking in a low, reverent voice. We have to leave. It's not your time to die. Not yet. But Gravewalker didn't move. He simply looked up, past the vault ceiling, as though he could see through the mountain to the stars beyond. Then, slowly, he turned to Thren and spoke. His voice was ragged, broken like rust scraping against old metal, but unmistakably human. They will come, with chains, with fire. When they do, remember me. Thren stepped forward, his voice barely audible. Why didn't you leave with him? Gravewalker turned towards the core, now glowing red with countdown heat. He laid a single hand on it. I was born in silence. Let me return to it. Delta 4 clenched his jaw. You don't have to die here. Gravewalker didn't answer. He had already made peace. The countdown hit 30 seconds. Delta 4 grabbed Thren and Javi by the arms, dragging them toward the emergency exit passage. It wasn't meant for escape, just a maintenance shaft for engineers. But the Varun had locked on to its beacon, now hovering nearby like a vulture over a fresh grave. Thren glanced back one last time. Gravewalker stood alone in the center of the room, fire rising around him, the weight of truth heavy on his shoulders. Not a god, not a villain, just a man who never got a choice. The hatch slammed shut, and Vault 0 exploded. The mountain tore itself open, flinging debris into the sky. The impact registered as a Category 5 tectonic event across Western Europe. Avalanche warnings echoed from Zurich to Istanbul, but beneath the roar of the earth, something far louder spread. Memory, history, unburied. The Varun escaped into orbit, limping, scorched by heat and grief. Delta 4 stood silent in the command deck, staring at the blue curve of Earth below. "Is it over?" Javi asked. Delta 4 shook his head. "Number it's begun." And across the stars, children who had been taught to love Earth now asked if it deserved it. Weeks passed, but they didn't feel like weeks. Time itself had warped, twisted by the weight of what Gravewalker had left behind. Earth wasn't the same anymore. Riots became revolutions. Statues of war heroes were pulled down, not by enemies, but by their own citizens. Children asked their teachers why their textbooks had no mention of Project Remnant. Colonies that once swore loyalty to Earth now burned its flags on every street corner. And through it all, one phrase echoed from system to system. "Remember him." Some whispered it in shame. Others chanted it in defiance. It became more than a quote. It became a movement. They called themselves the Forgotten Line. Survivors, rebels, former military, even some scientists, people who had read the files, seen the truth, and refused to let it be buried again. Commander Thren found himself summoned to testify at a United Systems tribunal on Luna. The hearing hall was filled with beings from dozens of planets, some human, some not, all of them staring at Earth's delegation with suspicion, and in some cases, outright disgust. Delta 4 sat beside Thren, technically a fugitive but untouchable now. He had become a symbol, part traitor, part truth-bearer. Thren stood as they called his name. He stepped into the spotlight, not as a commander, but as a witness. They asked him everything. What did you see? Did the weapon speak? Was Vault 0 real? Was Project Gravewalker sanctioned by Earth Command? He answered every question with the same tired honesty. Yes, all of it. The final question came from the Centauri chairwoman herself. What was he, Commander Thren? That being you call Gravewalker? Was he a machine? A soldier? A monster? Thren stared at the polished table in front of him, then raised his head slowly. He was human. The room went dead silent. More human than any of us, maybe, because he was made from our worst parts and still chose not to burn the world down. The tribunal didn't clap. This wasn't a performance, but it was heard. After the hearing, Thren sat alone on the station balcony, looking down at Earth. It still shone, blue and beautiful, but it no longer looked invincible. Not after what the galaxy had seen. Not after what it had done. Delta 4 joined him silently. I thought he'd kill us all, Thren muttered. Instead, he just showed us the truth. Delta 4 leaned against the railing. And that's harder to survive than any weapon. They stayed there for a while. Two men who'd once been enemies, now bound by something greater than war. Remorse. Do you think he really died in that vault? Thren asked eventually. Delta 4 didn't answer right away. Then he said, he was built to endure what would break anyone else. Pain, isolation, death itself. If he's gone, it's because he chose to be. Thren nodded slowly. What if he comes back? Delta Force smirked faintly. Then Earth better learn how to tell the truth before he knocks again. And somewhere, in a forgotten corner of the galaxy, on a barren moon with no name, a deep crater pulsed faintly with heat. Inside it, under layers of ash and rock, a single humanoid shape lay dormant. His armor cracked, his body still. But his eyes opened, not glowing,